We've also seen with our customers a tremendous increase in the interest and scrutiny around compensation. In two ways, really. One is as an engagement tool to drive engagement and enthusiasm and reward amongst the workforce. After all, that's at the end of the day probably the number one thing that people do show up for. So as an engagement tool, looking for ways to drive compensation so you get the right rewards to the highest performers and you incent behavior through the reward system. So that's a classic interest, but a heightened interest that we see of using compensation as a real tool for engagement and strategy. A flip side of what we see with compensation right now is this whole focus around compliance and essentially staying ahead of the compliance monster. We've all seen enough stories and seen enough relative to bonus schemes and unfair pay practices, perceived or real unfair pay practices, and golden parachutes and the like, that there's a tremendous amount of not only government interest and increased compliance, but also board of directors, compensation committees, executive teams. So it really is forefront for CEOs today. That gets to the issue of transparency. Do people understand how compensation is going to be allocated? Do they have expectations clearly set? And is there a fairness in the allocation of the reward system? All of those things are important, again, to create a workforce that trusts the organization and feels engaged.